All right, good afternoon, Steel Toe University. Today we are going to be talking about something that is just awesome for your business. I have experienced it in my own business, and that is the use of a consultant or a coach. And I'm with a very well-known and well-respected coach, and that is Keith McNulty with Gold Branch Performance. I've had the pleasure of knowing Keith now for a few years and have taken in quite a bit of his wisdom. And outside of Keith's accomplishments, which really the list goes on and on. I mean, Keith's background is in strategy and process. He's worked as an independent consultant. His passion is business transformation, taking businesses from a point where they may feel stuck, where they may feel like they just can't grow anymore, turning them around, looking at the processes and making them bigger, better, and more finely tuned. But most impressively, Keith is a 3-time, soon-to-be 4-time Ironman. Not half Ironman, but Ironman. Keith, welcome to the Steel Toe Podcast. Tell us about all of this.
Great. Thanks, Phil Saros. Appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it's great to be talking with you and enjoying working with you. And yeah, thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I suppose, from a business consulting and coaching standpoint, I've been a consultant for about 6 years. Before that, I was doing strategy and process improvement for a couple of different privately owned companies. And then earlier in my career, I was in corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions, doing a lot of kind of deal work. And I just found that I became more interested in operations, strategy and operations for business to help them achieve better, achieve more. And, so that's really been my focus last few years is, like you said, business transformation, business process improvement, mainly through strategy implementation, operational excellence or process improvement, and then enabling technology to facilitate all that happening. And then, of course, I connect that personally with one of my main outside passions, which is triathlon. And I've been a triathlete for about 11 years or so. I've been a lifelong swimmer, and I think about 4 years ago I started escalating up in triathlon. Did a half Ironman in Augusta, Georgia, 2016, and then last 3 years I've done the full Ironman. Once in Arizona, once in Florida, once in Cozumel, and so I'm preparing for Ironman Florida next month, November 2020. It's sort of a weird year, 2020, for just about everybody because of the pandemic, but certainly for triathletes, it's been strange because so many races have been canceled. So it's exciting, and I'm thrilled that we're likely. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's as of now, it's on, and we're going to race, and there's a lot that goes into it. Happy to get into that more.
Oh, thank you for you said a couple things. First of all, let me just tell a quick side note story. So I too am interested in triathlon, with the exception of I've very, very short distance triathlon. So I like to run, I like to swim, I like to bike, but I've done the sprint, which is the most basic entry level type triathlon. So I tell Keith one day, I'm like, hey, I'd really love to get out there and do some training with you. He says, sure, let's go swimming. So we go out to this lake, and he's like, well, where do you want to start? And there's roped off area where like all the little kids are and the families play. And I'm thinking like, well, just be on the rope, because if I get tired, I can hang on to the rope, right? He's like, how about these buoys? And I'm looking at these buoys, and I don't know, what were they? 200 meters off, maybe? He's probably.
Yeah, they're out in the lake a little bit.
They were out there. And he's like, well, let's start at the buoys. Well, so we swim to the buoys, and I'm about half dead by the time we just get to the buoy. And there's not an easy way to hang on to the thing. So you got to like hug and bear hug this thing. So Keith goes about swimming past the first one, the second one, the third one. Anyway, I made it to the first one and then caught my breath, back to the original one, and then I was done. I was headed back in. So this guy is no joke. You were hustling that day. How does triathlon play into mindset? And then you mentioned a word that just stuck out at me, and it was operational excellence. Wow. What does that what does that look like, and how does the triathlon play into that mindset of excellence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, it kind of gets in your head. And one of the fun things about the sport for me, Phil, is just discovering what you're capable of doing. You might think that you're capable of reaching a certain limit. And, when you hit that limit and then you go beyond it, it's, I don't know, it feels pretty good. It doesn't matter who you are when you can achieve something like, let's say, your first go out there, you reach the buoy, you go a few buoys, and wow, it seems intimidating. But then try it a few more times, and then month, 2 months later, like what you were able to accomplish a few months ago seems like a small thing compared to what you've built up to. So for something like Ironman or the sport of triathlon or lots of sports, is like if you make a commitment, you stay disciplined over time, you see what you're capable of doing, your abilities go up, your confidence level goes up. What seemed intimidating a while ago is something that's you're experienced at accomplishing more on a regular basis. So sometimes these things can take years to level up. And so that's one of the exciting things about the sport for me, is just accomplishing more. And as long as you're having fun, if you love it and you just enjoy doing it, and you're not intimidated by a lot of the, I suppose, the harder aspects of the sport, which is just it's all about endurance, really. And if your body and your mind are capable and interested and essentially wired for endurance, then it's just fun. But I want to also talk about your other question, which is, what is operational excellence, and how does triathlon play into that? From a business standpoint, in general, the idea is to make sure that the people, processes, and technology are all working efficiently and effectively and in harmony. Now, that's a lot of words, right? But in general, it's like, if you can measure something in your business process, you want to find the right measures and then measure them to see how you're doing. And so just like, going from the first buoy to the second buoy to the third buoy in business, it's like, well, we want to convert, maybe we convert 20% of our sales this month, maybe it's 30% next month, 40%, 50%, and just continue to improve on whatever the metric is. If it's, so call it number of customers, or let's say you have a number of leads, you get whatever, I'm making it up, 100 leads in a month. Are you turning 10 of those into customers? Or are you turning 20 of those into customers? That kind of measurement stuff. And then, of course, in sports, which is a lot of fun for me too, it's all about really speed, fundamentally, like how fast are you going? But then there's a lot of other things that go into that, such as nutrition. How much calories are you taking in? What is your heart rate operating at? What's your efficiency in each of the different disciplines? That sort of thing. So it's really figuring out what you can measure that's of value, and then measuring them and seeing performance, one period versus the next period, seeing how you're doing better.
Yeah. So as an owner, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, one of the difficult things for me, as I was maturing and trying to do more, is doing everything myself, asking for help or seeking guidance. You've run into a lot of business owners. What do you find that there's, at the point when I reached out and you and I started talking, and I've worked with other consultants in the past, it was almost a little later than it should have been. It was, you kind of hold on too long, and then finally you realize, I need some help. And so what I'm trying to do through our discussion is get people aware, like, hey, it's okay. Like, the best athletes in the world have coaches, it's not a sign that you're doing things wrong because you have a coach or consultant. There's some humility in that. But what is your experience with business owners? Do you find resistance? Do you find them resistant to change? How does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, start with sports. All great athletes have coaches of different types, be it strength and conditioning, skills, or nutrition. That's not just triathlon, that's any sport. So really, you, not just you, Phil, but you, anybody, if you want to be performing at your best, you need to have a coach for, one or a few different things. If you want to challenge yourself and keep making yourself, perform better at something, right? That's sports. And so yes, the same thing for business. And I just want to maybe quickly distinguish between consulting and coaching. So, consulting is someone who, works with a business leader or entrepreneur and really kind of gets more involved, kind of gets their hands dirty, gets involved and says, I have expertise that can help you with what you're doing. And coaching is more about asking smart and thoughtful questions, really listening and asking good questions and letting you figure it out. For me, what I do, I do some of both. It's, I call it consulting because I take a more active stance of that's just sort of what I've been doing for probably 12 years. But I use some coaching in my consulting. But in terms of using or finding the right coach or consultant to work with you, I think all business leaders have different levels of either some kind of resistance or mistrust of an outside opinion. And there's value in having an outside opinion because you're not the outside person arguably is objective at some level, and they don't have necessarily a vested interest in the outcome other than seeing you as a client become more successful. But building trusted or a trusted relationship between a coach and a consultant and a client, it's there's a lot of art to that, and it's a lot of relationship building. It's not just science and facts and hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z, but you should be doing A, B, and C. It's more like, how do you build trust? I mean, there's no scientific way of doing that. It's just comes with experience. So like I said, different leaders will engage differently. Every business leader shows up with their own experience in terms of how they've achieved the success that they've achieved to date, number one, and number two, to what extent have they had success or failure working with coaches or consultants previously. And let me just give you an example. When I worked for Deloitte from 2017 through 2019, and I was working on a project to do, it's like a robotic process automation, really, improving a process for a large operation. And the leader of this, of the client's team had worked with Deloitte maybe 5 years before, and they worked on a large ERP implementation. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It's a software tool, but it's large and it's costly to implement. And so, when something like that goes wrong, that leaves a sort of a residual feeling, not just a memory about it, but just like a feeling of if a large consulting project goes south and lots of money has been spent, lots of time has been spent, it doesn't go the right way, somebody might have a lot more resistance towards the next group of consultants or the next project that they're going to need outside help for.
Yeah, that would make sense. So you talked about business transformations. You said specifically that you've been a part of seeing, you played an active role in transforming businesses. Is there a baseline, like a set of averages, say these are the areas of business where most entrepreneurs struggle, and tell us, what does a positive transformation look like? How long does it take? What type of buy-in do you need from the client? How does that process take place?
Sure. Yeah. So with, call it a small to medium-sized business, there's a whole bunch of things that could need to be addressed, but it rarely takes less than a year, in total to do a full transformation. So like, let me give you an example, kind of companies that I've worked with. These are in financial services. Two private equity owned companies I work for. They were about 2-year transformation programs that I led, and fundamentally, I was reporting to the CEO of the company, and the mission was essentially to put in a new, what we called a system for managing. And so, what is that? This is really a combination of, process management, process improvement, managing by metrics. So, putting in those right measures to measure how the processes are performing, and then creating initiatives so that what the team is working on, the internal company team, they're working to take actions or organize and structure and take actions to move the needle on those measurements. And a lot of the times that means changing the process or putting in a new piece of technology. And so to do a large kind of company transformation where you have all of those different processes changing, metrics being looked at for the first time and measured, that can take a couple of years. For a sort of an entrepreneurial environment where it's just a business owner, and maybe you have somewhere between 1 and 10 people around you, it depends on what kind of support you have to make changes, and really how much you're looking to grow as well. In terms of so what are common types of challenges that entrepreneurs face when it's really just sort of either a one-man show, one-person show, or you got maybe a couple of people. So the way I think about that is, and this applies to some of the work that we're doing as well, Phil, is, you have basically the side of your company that's focused on bringing new customers into your business, right? The sales, marketing, the process of selling to customers, making proposals, winning the business. And then there's the delivery side of the business. And this is certainly true for consulting as well. You have to win clients, and then you have to deliver on what the scope of work is to do. So if you kind of divide it into those two basic areas, sales on one side, delivery on the other side, you may have pain points or problems on both of them. Maybe one or both of them is working great, but it's pretty common that there's going to be some sort of challenge or limitation. You don't have enough people. You're like, for example, you could be, pitching, 10 different customers, and you're only winning 1 or 2. So that's like, if you win 2 out of 10, that's 8 proposals that you're not winning on. So you're spending so much time to produce those 8 proposals that don't turn into anything really productive or meaningful for your company. So it's really, how do you improve your efficiency and your effectiveness on your sales side, and then making sure the quality is good on the delivery of what you're providing to the customer. So you're getting the most out of your time, and you're making the customers that you bring into your business, happy and saying good things about you.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great point about how that it's divided up in your. I think about it as you've got your admin or your office. Something has to happen in your office for billing and invoicing and reception of new leads and calls, and then you have this whole sales process that 100% of the people coming in is only going to yield whatever 20, 30, 40, 50%. You're not going to sell 100%. Then you have production, and all of these are like these wheels that are turning, and you've got to make sure that sales is the new leads are being handled to make sure that the salespeople have enough so that the production people have enough. Because if any one of those stops, I can imagine it's chaos. And I think in a lot of business, it could be defined as chaos, maybe somewhat controlled chaos. But where does the freedom from the chaos come from?
Yeah, great. Here's my answer to that question is, so you talk about all the different wheels. So the way I think about it, and it's pretty common terminology, is businesses are basically three things: people, process, and technology. You could say there's a fourth, which is assets, but it's the wheels are the processes. So all the things that you just mentioned, they're all business processes. And so if you as a business owner, you know what each of those processes is supposed to produce in a week or in a month, let's call it a month, right? You have to close X number of deals. You have to, produce Y number of projects or outputs or widgets. If the way I think about it, the way a lot of process improvement professionals, or like people who do Lean Six Sigma, which is a process improvement methodology, think about it is, it's not just error rate, but it's understanding what the process is supposed to produce in a given period of time. So if you and not only that, but it's what we call process maturity. And process maturity is really documentation of what the process is, so that it's not just all up here. It's not in your mind, right? It's on paper, because if it's in your mind, you can tell it to somebody else, and then they tell it to somebody else, and it's different. If you put it on a piece of paper and you email it to 5 people, arguably everyone's looking at the same thing, right? So if you document the process and you say this process is supposed to produce 10 widgets per month, we can argue about whether it should be 10 or whether it shouldn't be 10, but what we know right now is it's 10. And so if you know what each process is and how many outputs each process is supposed to produce, and what call it a quality ratio, like 5 great widgets or out of 10, or put it in a sales terminology, we want to close 5 deals out of 10 in a month, right? That's what a successful process looks like. So if you do that for all of your processes, if you have 20 processes, call it 10 on the front office being sales and marketing, 10 on the back office, that being finance, HR, IT, compliance, and all that stuff. If all those processes are working right and you're hitting your numbers, that's harmony, right? That's the piece right there.
Harmony. I like that. I'm not sure I've reached a state of harmony.
You got to get your processes working right.
Very briefly. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in our heads as small business owners that doesn't get communicated, but we subconsciously project our expectations on the people working for us, and that's where we get frustrated. This guy didn't show up for work on time. This guy is smoking in the truck or talking on his cell phone or wasting time. And then the question goes out, like, do the people below you know what their expectations are? Because I would imagine that everybody in the chain, you should, as a leader, I would suspect it'd be better to be visionary. Like, let them know, keep them in the loop. Here's where our company's going and growing. Do you find that's a weak point of small businesses, or maybe they're just stuck on their own track and not really letting people know how valuable they are? I guess relate that to how they treat their resources, whether it's people or money or time.
Yeah. So communication in any business or management or leadership role is really important. And I think, most people understand that, but you really have to work at that every day. And even if you're a great communicator, you're not going to see perfection, anywhere really. So I think there's never, in my experience, you can't invest too much effort and time on good communication with your employees or your team, or towards the effort of building a trusted relationship with those people who you're working with. Because you said it, like, if you're subconsciously projecting it, like, they're not picking it up, right? They might feel like, oh, the boss is unhappy, or this guy's not liking it, but like, I don't know if he has a real point, or if he's just in a bad mood, or if he's just angry, or if there's something legitimate. So it falls on you as the leader, as the entrepreneur, to communicate effectively. And so, maybe it is, there are times when the team needs to take a break, but there are times when the team needs to work too. So, how you communicate about that is really important. I don't think I've ever seen perfection. Like, there's just levels of how hard you're working at it and trying to get better. I don't see over communication as a problem, generally speaking. That's my point of view. Others may differ with that. But I think in general, if you're communicating your expectations to the team, then it'll be more difficult for them to say they didn't know, in general. But it's also good to, treat them as human beings and make sure they're getting what they need. They have the tools and the autonomy to perform their jobs effectively. Give them what they need to perform, but treat them as human beings, but also communicate what the expectations are about what high performance, what quality and success look like. So they know. If they don't know, it falls on you as the boss or as the entrepreneur. Just communicate more and ask for feedback, and if people are thinking something about you that you don't know, well, you might want to ask them and see what they think.
Do most, in your experience, how easy or difficult is it to scale when you've got an entrepreneur that's really good at what they're doing, but they struggle maybe to duplicate that when they try to step out of one of these processes? How does that take place? How can they scale better?
So, okay, it depends is the answer. And so this comes back to the process point. Do you have processes that are well-defined? You know what success looks like, and you have the right, in other words, it's a harmonized environment between people, process, and technology. If you have all of those working together effectively, you're going to be able to scale better. If there's something like, if you're doing it all yourself as an entrepreneur, or if all the processes are up here, or you have 3 or 4 people who are trying to work together, but the communication isn't clear, the people aren't working effectively and efficiently together because they're not fully communicating, or it's not documented, it's going to be harder, without a doubt. So my bias and my recommendation almost always, or just as a general rule, is to develop the processes as much as you can. And by development, I mean document them, write them down, share them with their team. Make sure, this comes back to the communication point. If you write it down, you share it, we can disagree over whether this is the right thing to do or whether it can be improved. In fact, we want that conversation where we say, well, hey, this process, I understand what it is, but like, we could do it this way, and it might work better. Like, that's the kind of conversation you want to start to drive with the people who are doing the process, because what that's going to mean is the process is going to work better over time, and people will be more bought into it because you, as the entrepreneur, as the leader, are listening to your team. So to achieve scale in general, just the more development and buy-in and understanding of what the processes are, the communication amongst the team. And I also think it's important, if you want to scale, you need to have the right technology tools that enable the process as designed and as it's intended as well. So technology is a whole another topic, but if you do it right, it can really accelerate the performance of the business process. And you want the team to be happy with the software and feel good about how it's working great, rather than just like frustrated as heck because all the information doesn't fit in cleanly, or there's something that's confusing about the system. That's you don't want that. I know it's kind of straightforward, sort of, somewhat stating the obvious, but when you get into the larger scale systems, and you got, hundreds or even thousands of people using the same system, the same principle applies. I mean, you want to keep it simple, you want to make it understandable, you want to make it just line up with the process so people are like, yeah, this works great.
Do you i- is it hard for people to change? That's a very general question, but
So my answer to that is yes. I think it is, and especially as you get older, everyone's different though, and everyone is sort of wired or prepared for change. Some more than others. Everyone's going to take to it differently. I think a lot of what makes one's ability to change more successful is how bought into it you are, how passionate you are about it. Like I attribute my success and happiness around triathlon because I love it, I enjoy it, I get so much energy out of it. I also really enjoy helping business leaders accomplish new things or transform their business or achieve new sort of levels of performance. I get really energized by that. So I think in terms of changing, like if you're changing towards something you're passionate about, you're going to have more success. You're going to have more results. If you're changing in a way that makes you uncomfortable or seems weird or doesn't make sense, in general, you're gonna resist that. So if you get clear about like what it is that you enjoy, let's talk about like the business. Like if you really love this business and you want to grow it, you'll probably have more success in changing, your own, and just back up, say, why do people tune into Steel Toe University? My guess is that your listeners, your audience are people who want to perform better. They want to see their business grow. They want to see their business do well. They want to learn something, right? They want to understand something more than they do now. We're here to learn, right? So if you have that mindset, you're probably going to be more successful at changing.
I think one of the things that I admire about you, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on as a guest, is because you do things that are hard and you have fun with it, and you realize that like doing hard things is hard, but it also gives meaning and purpose to everything that you do. I would say, just in knowing you, you run your business like you're an Iron Man. You're going to when you've reached maximum effort to go a little bit further than that. And that's something that rubs off as a client. That's something that you're delivering even as a secondary thing or subconscious thing. You're delivering that. And I think in picking a coach or consultant, it's important to learn about who they are as a person and find out, are they somebody that has walked the walk? Can they, have they walked through the fire, and so to speak? So as we wrap up, let me ask you, if you take, first of all, do you have the capacity to take on new clients right now? I know you're a busy man.
I do. I'm definitely out there pitching for new clients, and we'll see. There's a lot of activity, but yeah, no, I'd love to hear from new clients. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really only about a year, not even quite a year into this new venture. So yeah, I'm definitely talking with lots of new prospective clients right now. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Awesome. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so my website is goldbranchperformance.com, and should I give my email address, or it's Keith at goldbranchperformance.com. Sure. Those are probably the best way, but yeah, you can reach me through the website too.
Okay, and check in the details below, and we'll include some more information on Keith and how to get a hold of him. Keith, real quick, when a new client comes to you, what should they not be afraid of that they might be afraid of?
Having a conversation, and being open about what they're really struggling with. I find that some of the most challenging conversations for me are not from my end, but like for a consultant, is like trusting a new outside person I've never met with some of the the serious important details about my business. And it's like, I understand, like, it's confidential. It's your baby. Your business is your baby, and it's your livelihood. Like, so it's really important. But, by holding back and not really giving the whole story, you might not get as good of an answer either from me or from others who are in a position to support you. Understand you need to be careful about what information you share with who. But if you are looking to grow and transform and improve, then I think the more you can share and reveal like what's real, what's going on, then the more others can give you input to help you for real deal with the problems.
Don't send you on a wild goose chase and trying to figure things. It's a waste of time, essentially. I would.
Yeah, or yeah, like if you it's real, if you're saying you're speaking at a high level and it's really these kind of basic things, but it's really deeper. It's I don't trust anybody, so I want to do it all myself. That's that's something that can be addressed, right? And you can deal with, like in this example, grow in a way that sort of manages risk and doesn't expose you too much risk to, if you've gotten burned before, like in this case. So.
Yeah. Well, I value that, Keith. I mean, I've seen you in action, both as an athlete as well as a coach, and it's transformative. I'm somebody who thinks I know it all a lot of times. I mean, I've done some hard work, but man, the amount of learning and eye-opening things that I've learned specifically from you when we lay it all out and we map it all out. I'm thinking like, oh, come on, I've done this 1,000 times. And then boom, there's like 10 things sitting in front of me. It's like, wow, I didn't think of that, or I didn't consider this, or I considered this, but I consider doing it now when really I should do it 2 years from now. There's more important things. So what do we do now? Short term, medium term, and then what's the long range goal that we have? And so last question, how important is the ability to set your business up to be sold? And how do people reach the end of the line only to realize that there's nothing to sell and they think they have something to sell, but yet they don't?
Yeah. Okay. So there's really 2 points here, and I want to talk about both of them. But the first one is really setting goals and priorities. And you talked about like now versus 2 years from now. I think it's really important to figure out, what do you need to do this month? Like what's immediately important? Maybe you need to, stabilize the process, make sure your business is running efficiently and effectively. And then sort of the, beyond the right now or this month is sort of the, next kind of 3 to 6 months, what's important? How do I improve what I'm doing? And what steps, what actions do I need to take to improve that over the 3 to 6 month period? Because I don't need to do these right now, but these will definitely help. But then there's the longer term, like, where do I want to be in a year or 2 years versus where I'm at now? Like you're not going to be able to fix that. You can't pull the trigger and make it happen like this month, but something that you work towards. And this last piece really plays into your other question about, should I build something that I can sell, and how important that is that? How important is it to you as an entrepreneur is really up to you. It's like, what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve in your career. It's not for me to say. I'm a consultant, but I would say, like in this business, or any business where it's really just you, and you're not going to be able to sell it. Like, so if you want to sell your company, you have to grow it and position it so that it's an asset that someone will want to buy. And so the distinction is, if it's your name, it's your face, and you're doing everything, then you don't go with the business when it gets sold. So if you want to build a business to sell it, build it in such a way that it's running by itself with only your supervision, so that you can hand the keys off, here are the keys, but you don't need me anymore. You want to build it to make it that way. So that's definitely something that you can achieve. But for lots of entrepreneurs, where they're making every decision, they're selling every project, they're overseeing everything, they're doing everything. That's not an asset or a business that really is going to be sold, because you're not going with the business.
Yeah, that's so true. So, well, Keith, thank you. I really appreciate and value all of your time, your energy, your wisdom. I would encourage anyone that's listening that's kind of stuck, or they're thinking that there's an easier way, or they want to duplicate themselves, or they're wearing too many hats, or they're worn out, or they're tired, exhausted, but business is good and they don't know how to handle it all. Have a conversation. Don't, this isn't a big scary thing. Make a commitment, sign a contract, have a conversation. Whether it's Keith or somebody else, pick up the phone and talk to someone. And that may be the thing that drives your business to one step forward, that gets you back into loving what you do and not being so burnt out. It's great to have another pair of eyes, especially ones that have walked the line, that have the experience. So I can say with certainty, Keith does. Have a conversation, and I appreciate that. Keith, any closing thoughts for our audience?
No, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a great conversation. I've totally enjoyed working with you. And I agree with what you're saying here. It doesn't have to be me. I mean, I'd love to hear from some of your listeners, but whether it's me or someone else, there's lots of business coaches out there. Get some support. Ask for help. Ask for an outside opinion. It doesn't really cost you anything to have a conversation or two with several people. So really, as you think about evolving and transforming into a more successful, more mature version of yourself as a business leader, with the more outside expertise you get, the stronger you're going to be. I'm happy to help. There's other resources. So, appreciate your listeners, hanging in here too. So I've enjoyed it.
You got it. Well, thank you, Keith. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And keep an eye out for our next podcast, released usually every Wednesday. And if you haven't heard about the Mastermind program, head over to Steel Toe University and check out our Mastermind program, where we have lots of in-depth conversations about your business and improving your business throughout the week. So with that, thank you, Keith. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it, Phil. Thanks.
All right. Have a great day.